Welcome back to On Your Plate, where we talk about the real mom things that no one is talking about. This month we have a very special episode for you planned because it's Women's Month, and we want to celebrate all the many things that women do. We're so excited to have so many special guests this time, and we're shaking things up because we have these moms coming to you from all over the world. They are entrepreneurs, they're influencers, they're content creators, they are doctors, they're specialists, and so much more. So we're so excited to get so many valuable tips from all these moms, because if you've been through it, probably someone else has too, and just hear from others and just embrace the process, right?
Yeah. And for us, I think that Mother's Month's an amazing month because everybody's celebrating alongside us, but we're always rooting women year round, right, Ellie? Mm-hmm. So this is exciting. We can do something different and just get a bunch of different voices, and let's go. Supporting women-owned businesses.
That was cute. So now we have with us Erika London. She's an incredible entrepreneur, and we're so excited to hear so much about your story, how you got started, what gave you the drive and the passion to become an entrepreneur, and also how you juggle motherhood and entrepreneurship, because that is the key question I think we all want answers to.
Well, we all want the answers, and we're still working on finding all of them. but the good news is every time we have this conversation, I feel like I find a little bit more of the answer from other moms who are in that same hustle. So thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be on this show. My name is Erika London. I am one of the founders and CEO of Sushi by Boo. We currently have over 20 locations across the US and growing. So we started in New York, and we're currently operating in New York, New Jersey, Chicago, Philly, DC, Puerto Rico, Florida, and opening up our newest market, actually soft opening later this week in Nashville. So we're super excited.
Congratulations, that's amazing.
Thank you. We're very excited, bringing the sushi craze all over the country and beyond. So that's where I'm at. I'm a mom of 3. I have a 7, a 5, and a just turned 2-year-old, 2 girls and a boy, Jada, Misha, and Nico. And the juggle is real.
I believe you.
Yeah. Britt also has 3. I have 1. But I don't know. I keep telling myself 1 is a lot.
Well, 3 is good. It feels like 5.
So tell us more about your business. We're so interested to know, first of all, how you grew to that many locations. But what really inspired you to entrepreneurship, or what led you in that direction? Was it before you had kids or after you had kids that you started your business?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was before I had kids, luckily, which I think is one of the major reasons, I think, just kind of keeping the momentum going versus, every restaurant is a new business that we're starting, but kind of the overall and the overarching business was started before the kids. And obviously it was really hard to kind of maintain that momentum and keep going as you continuously have more and more of those children. But I think, having started before made it a tiny bit easier in a weird way. So how I started, I was actually a college student at NYU, and I was supposed to go into wealth management or finance or something way more traditional that my parents were way more excited about at the time. I always say that before I started college, I think I watched Coyote Ugly a few too many times. So I was like, well, I absolutely must work at a bar. That was one of my first goals when I got there. In college, the word entrepreneur was not as popular as it is right now. There was definitely no entrepreneur trend that was going around where everyone wanted to be an entrepreneur. It was just, you started a business, and something about just saying I started a business or I'm a business owner definitely doesn't sound as glamorous as the entrepreneurial spirit does. So I fell in love with it before I even understood what it was. I was lucky enough that I started working in a place where I was exposed to people who were just obsessive, just passionate about what they were doing, and just the energy behind it. I didn't even understand what it was at the time. I was studying marketing, I was studying finance, I was studying all these things that just felt, more traditional and what I imagined. I was studying journalism at some point. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I got really addicted to that entrepreneurial spirit and just the ability to be oh, I can come up with an idea and then use my network and just figure out how to make it happen, and just come up with something in your head and then see it come to life to me, I was just hooked on that. So it wasn't necessarily like, oh, I want to start this business. I was more, I became obsessed with the idea of starting businesses because like that energy is just so addictive. Then we had sports bars, we had nightclubs. It was like a lot of more traditional nightlife experiences. Where we were always obsessed with sushi, but we always knew that we didn't know anything about sushi. And I always said, unless we find somebody that knows sushi, then, we can consider it. So we found our chef partner, Chef David Buadana, which is why it's called Sushi by Boo. And we took everything that we learned in our decades of experience opening up more traditional nightlife experiences and experiential marketing. We were doing food truck festivals. We were doing like all these crazy events for tens of thousands of people, and everything that worked for us in the sense of marketing and engagement and just getting people excited and how strong our marketing was. We then applied that to everything he knew about sushi. He trained in Japan. Sushi is literally his life. And then we combined this high-end sushi experience with, I think the success behind the brand comes from the juxtaposition of like the unexpected with this high-end refined culinary experience. So when you're imagining, high-end sushi experience, as we all do, you're imagining something that's like very quiet, very refined, very high-end, very expensive. And then what we did is we combined this amazing culinary experience with these different vibes and this like crazy different aesthetics, and every location has a completely different concept to it. So we have like 90s hip hop vibes or disco sushi vibes or roaring 20s vibes, and the menu's always the same, but the experience is always different, where we layer in like different music, different design, different elements that just completely surprise you when you walk in.
Oh my gosh, that sounds so fun. I want to come.
We'll definitely get you in there.
Sushi. I think it's my favorite food ever. I would eat it every day for sure.
I almost do.
I would if I was there for sure. So I think the most amazing part is like, how did you put that all together? Because I think that's the thing that I hear the most, being that I'm an entrepreneur myself. I've actually never had an office job. I've never had a job outside of, I guess, the traditional workforce. I've never done that. So being an entrepreneur, a lot of times people come to me and ask me questions like, like, how do you manage it? Or how did you put it together? Or how do you do it? But I don't have essentially the kind of team that you have. So how would you recommend to other moms wanting to get into being an entrepreneur and putting together a big team like that? That's really like special and amazing. Like, how did you do that?
Yeah, I mean, we say all the time, you are only as strong as your team is, and your team could be the person sitting next to you, and your team could be, the 250 employees we have working for us, right? But sometimes you're doing it alone, but you're never completely doing it alone, right? So I think the first thing that you need to do, your network and who you know is everything. Not because they're not necessarily opening doors for you, which is obviously one of the biggest things, but you're learning from them, right? Anything that you want to do, someone has already done. Maybe not in the same way, but anyone can help you. And I think people are a lot more willing to help and answer questions and guide you than you think. And I think that's one of the things that I've learned along the way, where you're doing something and it feels like, well, this is impossible. How am I going to do this? It feels like this goal of yours is so big. And then, we all live on Instagram. We all live on LinkedIn. We all, find somebody who's done something similar, if not the same, something similar, and reach out to them, ask them some questions. People love being considered an expert. So if someone is asking them for help, typically they're inclined to help. But also, there's entrepreneurs that's in their blood, right? Like they want to help other people. They want to see people grow. They want to see things grow in front of them. So I think, for someone who wants to become an entrepreneur, just start talking to people, right? One, you'll get help, you'll get advice, you'll get information that you weren't even looking for in the first place. And then people love connecting you, being like, oh, this is a great idea. Let me connect you with this person. Oh, this is something that I know so-and-so is actually interested in working on. Let me connect you with this person. I can't tell you the number of times that our success and our journey has been pushed forward in that way.
Love that. So I have roots in the hospitality industry. I started, I say BC, before children. Many moons ago, I lived in Chicago, and it's a lively industry, but I worked a lot. I didn't even feel like it was work, though. It was part of my lifestyle. I remember, 50, 60 hours a week, and I was full steam ahead, jumping to all the openings, events, and, you got to just stay within the scene. But I'm just so curious how you starting the business right before children and then transitioning to a whole party of 3 How have you prioritized that and juggle kind of the change within hospitality and your industry to make it work?
Yeah, I mean it's hard. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna lie. It is definitely hard. And I think, exactly what you said, that's really reminiscent of what like my life used to be. I used to work in the office during the day and then bartend on the weekends when I was younger and then go to all the events and like I was never home, right? Like that's why I think I used to live in New York City. I used to live in a teeny tiny apartment. It didn't matter because I'm like, well, I'm just going home to sleep and shower and like that was it. So yeah, but then I think you start realizing like time, whether, in your personal life, in your professional life, whether you're a mom or business owner or just a person, time is your most valuable asset. And then you start realizing, okay, how am I investing this time and what is the ROI on everything? I'm definitely a sucker for saying yes to everything. That's honestly my New Year's resolution, to stop saying yes to every opportunity, stop saying yes to every event. I want to do all these things. I want to be there. But at the end of the day, it's like, what is the ROI on that, right? I'm going to sacrifice for anything you say yes to. Like, sure, if you have an open book, but you don't, right? I have 3 kids. I have a very aggressively growing business. I have a husband. I have a family. I have friends. Like, I have my personal life that I want to also maintain. Anytime you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. So I think when you start weighing it out and realizing, okay, this networking event could be great. Sure, I can make a contact anywhere, but at what cost, right? At what am I saying no to? So I think just realizing, where am I investing that time? What's the ROI on it? And it sounds a lot less exciting to start weighing out your social calendar like that. But I think that's the only way to do the juggle, right? Like I know it's like, I think also a very tricky part is anyone who's having this conversation. I think the hardest part is that you're really ambitious at your job, your career, your business, whatever it is. But that likely means that you're also really ambitious in motherhood, or else you're not having this conversation, right? So yes, I want to hit those revenue goals and I want to open X amount of locations this year. And I want to, hit that dream exit in my head that I'm working towards. But I also want to be a room mom and I want to go on the field trips and I want to make every holiday as magical as possible. And it's like, well, how am I going to fit that all into the 24 hours? And it's like, well, I still need to sleep and I still need to eat. But then you start sacrificing other things and you realize, maybe I can outsource some of these things, or maybe I don't need to, spend as much time and energy on this. I use a lot of dry shampoo and I order my groceries. And there's like certain things that you just start calculating. Okay, you do an audit.
Check. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's like there's only so much. There's only so much you can do, right? Like you still need to feed your family, and you still like need to look cute, but like I can't like blow out my hair every 3 days. Like that's just not going to happen. So, you do, it sounds crazy, but you do an audit, or this is what I do every couple months. I literally do an audit of like, okay, day to day, like this is what my calendar looks like. This is how much time I'm spending on this. And then I look and say, this is crazy. Like this has to go, this has to go, this has to go, and maybe outsource this, forget that, put this on hold. And that's how you do it. But it's always a juggle. There's no like perfect answer.
Can you audit my calendar? Because I need help. I need professional help right now.
Calendar.
I thought I had a calendar, but this. So the funny thing is that I just wanted to bounce off that what you just said, because I've had it where like I'm at Pilates class at 9:30 with the other non-working moms, because that's the mom hour at the gym. It's 9:30. Sure. It's like a cliche. But I'll have friends say to me, "Oh, must be nice because you're at the gym at 9:30." And I'm like, "Yeah, I was the one working till 3 a.m. as well, because the only time I can go to the gym is when my son's at school, because I'm a single mom and I have to figure out how to prioritize these things." And the first thing that normally does go is the gym, because I'm like, no, I have too much work today. I didn't sleep last night. I have to get this done. But in a way, that's when you start, like you said, with a checklist or the ROI. The gym isn't just to look good. The gym isn't just to, have a better body. It makes me feel good. And it gives me the energy that I need to get through the day. So it's actually something I should prioritize almost on the top. I mean, of course, my son is on the top, but up there, because it does matter. And I think that that's what happens a lot. Being an entrepreneur as a mother is a lot of the things come first before our own needs. And if we're not good, no one around us is good. So you can have a thriving business, but I think it even said in The Devil Wears Prada, the guy says to her somewhere around the road, is your personal life suffering and you're not doing good enough at work?
Yeah.
And it's like, something's got to go, right? I mean,
Something's got, yeah.
So many hours. And the last thing you want to do as you age, especially like now that I'm aging, I'm finding maturity in saying no. I'm finding maturity in finding what matters most. And of course, a lot of that is my son and time with him, because you don't get that time back. But
Right.
they do say in entrepreneurship that you don't work 9 to 5, you work 24 hours a day. Like it's
You do. And that's, there's definitely a lot of pros and cons to that. I like to focus on the pros. Of course, the cons are that, there's no one else at the end of the day. Like it's on you, and you want it, you're not going to like, okay, pass this to someone else. And that's why it kind of goes back to team being the most important, because you need someone else that can cover for you. You need to, have someone else that you can help delegate to. You need someone that can just, even for a couple hours, just be able to unplug and have that, sense of calm that, okay, someone else will cover this if I need it.
being that you have such a successful business and so many employees and so many locations, did you ever find struggles in the workforce as a female entrepreneur versus being a male? Or how did you find that journey being a female?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's funny because I always say this, and then people always come back with, well, most industries are male dominated. And that's sadly true. Like I always say, well, hospitality is especially male dominated, because it is. But I guess there's some solace in the fact that many people feel that way, because most of the industries that these women are coming out from are male dominated because of all the structures of society that we know about. But yeah, I mean, especially like starting, I was a bartender, I was a shop girl, kind of breaking through that, like, okay, I'm presenting myself in one way, and then all of a sudden presenting myself in a different way, and kind of going into a more corporate direction, and even kind of reframing what that looks like for myself, and kind of what my identity in this field looks like. Right. Like I started as an 18-year-old shop girl. I was obviously, doing some silly things, and, pouring out, standing on the bar and wearing coconuts for my luau parties, and like all these ridiculous things. And then all of a sudden being like, okay, maybe I should stop doing some of those things and kind of move into a more professional role. But, for people to look at you differently. But yeah, along the way, I've been asked the most ridiculous, I started a mobile manicure company along the way of this journey somewhere. And I was sitting in an investor meeting, and I was 24 years old, and literally we had this entire presentation. It was great. It was so exciting. And they literally asked me, like, one of the first questions after the presentation, they asked me, like, if I was planning on having children and what my family plans were. And I'm like, of course, things like that, they're bound to happen. And in the moment, you kind of are so confused, like, wait, what? Were you listening to anything I just said? Like the first question, like, yeah, of course they want to know, like, are you committed at 24 years old? You're probably, we all know. So yes, there's plenty of challenges that happen even right now. All of our partners are men on our cap table. There's no other women. I would love to get some on there at some point in the near future, in the future races. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of challenges, and it's interesting because, of course, in the earlier years where, there's the breastfeeding and the all night teething and the sleepless nights, and when you're like more physically engaged as a mom, in addition to the mental, it's interesting to like wake up in the morning and realize no one around me is having the same experience. Like, yes, there's a lot of devoted dads on my team, and I think they're great, but it's different, right? They're not taking like that physical toll as a parent.
Yeah, no one asked the dads, like, how do you juggle all of this? How do you juggle?
No one asks. It's just
What's
like,
your family for you? You're gonna have more children. Nobody asks dads that.
No, they don't. They don't.
Well, I know that as I started, I have a jewelry brand as well. And when I started my business, I got in my first store. It was a pretty big retail store. And it was like the first thing out the gate. I was one of the only female designers that designed men's jewelry. It was all men's designers of men's jewelry and men's store owners. And I was this girl that come in and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to make some bracelets. And they're just like, okay. And their first reaction was, the bracelets are great, but is she going to be able to sustain this? Is she going to be responsible? And I think that judgment really affected me early on, because I was like, okay, I can't cancel or I can't not deliver this, not because there was a valid reason, but because they're going to think that I'm incapable because I'm a woman.
Right.
And I think that hit me really hard, so I felt like I had to overcompensate for being a woman, overcompensate for being a cute woman, a cuter woman, because then they judge you more that you're stupid. If you're pretty, you must not be smart, and this is probably also your daddy's money, and you probably just woke up one day, had this great idea, and somebody's doing all this for you. And that's a rough one sometimes, because it can either make you or break you. Yeah. It can make you so much stronger, or it can really affect your journey in a big way.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think, being in that similar Similar position. I think making it a pro, right? I think it's almost like an advantage because I feel like you already have one, you're so much more motivated to push past that, which is absurd that you're even put in that position in the first place. But there is that, people ask, like, how do you keep going and how do you stay so motivated to do all this? And aren't you tired? And it's like, yeah, in the back of my head, like all the times that people were like, you're just that much more motivated. I feel like you bottle it up and you put it in like a secret, like a fuel tank where it's like, okay, that's just going to keep me going just to like prove those people wrong.
Yeah, I agree.
I really struggle sometimes with like imposter syndrome as an
Oh my
entrepreneur.
God, it's my favorite topic.
Honestly, it's so hard for me, and like some days I'm like on top of the mountain and I'm like, wow, I have so much fuel and the entrepreneurial spirit, and then the other days I'm in the valleys and I'm like, why am I doing this? I'm the worst person to do this. So
Yeah.
I'd love to know from you, like, how do you pull yourself out of that kind of roller coaster ride as an entrepreneur, especially with a family and kind of pushing through and having that, I would say, carry or even like a burden of 250 employees. I know that has to be a lot of stress for you, kind of pushing through and making those right decisions. But what do you do for yourself to kind of push through that?
Yeah, I mean, I think roller coaster ride is like a really good way to put it. The entrepreneurial journey. It's like you're laughing, you're crying. Sometimes you want to throw up. Sometimes you want to just say, "Get me off this ride. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this anymore. Get me off this ride." But it's like, no, you gotta get back on. It was really fun, and then you get off, and you're like a little shaky, and you're like, I'm gonna do it again. And I think that's what being an entrepreneur is, right? Like you get off, and you're like, okay. You remember like all the good, the bad, and you're like, I'm just going to keep doing it. I'm going to go for it again. So what do you do for yourself to, I guess to fight that imposter syndrome? And I love this topic because it's such an unfortunate phenomenon that I have not met one female business owner that's like, yeah, of course I experienced that. And it's like, do men experience that? Some, but it's a lot less. And what do you do? I mean, I think you have to surround yourself with people that, I hate to say like external validation is really necessary sometimes, but I think we all know like calling that person that's going to remind you of all the benefits and all the positivity that you're doing and like everything that you're doing. And, just remembering why you're doing it in the first place. Right. And also getting yourself out of whatever is like getting you stuck in that moment. And I think that's like, we tend to just get stuck in that, whatever is bothering us, whatever we feel like, okay, this is, we're not adequate at this, or our deficiency in this. And I think at the end of the day, imposter syndrome is because I think we are so critical of ourselves. And not only are we like so excited about all our positivity, and we have the ego to get up there and do it, right? But we also can't help but keep thinking about all of like, oh, I'm deficient in this or maybe this. For me, I think I embrace, and I feel like I've spent a lot of time understanding like these are my strengths, right? And I think what people never want to admit are these are my weaknesses, and saying like people I think focus on the weaknesses and then they let that kind of grow and kind of bug them. And instead of being like, these are my strengths, I'm going to outsource my weaknesses, or I'm just going to like avoid things that force me to get into all that. And then put yourself in this positive mindset of, okay, I'm going to rely on a teammate, or I'm going to outsource this, or just drop it. Like at this point in our lives, like we're too old to be like, I'm not good at this. Wah. And it's like, yeah, I do that all the time. I panic about certain things all the time. But at the end of the day, I'm like, nobody cares about my deficiencies as much as I do.
Yeah.
Honestly.
That's such a good point. And I also feel like bringing that back into the motherhood space, we already put so much pressure on ourselves to be the best mother we ever could be. And obviously nobody has a playbook of what to do in every scenario. But I think
Right.
that one of the biggest things is being that I've had multiple businesses along the way, I just couldn't go to somebody and really tell them that I was failing. And I think that that's such a great point that you mentioned, to have a cheerleader or to have somebody that tells you, you're great at this. Because I think I say I'm going to quit every single week, at least once during the week. I just said it probably the day before yesterday, like I'm done with this, I can't anymore. Because it's normal. I mean, you have goals and you're going to get pushback. And I think that that's one thing that's been great doing this show with Britt, is that she's also a mom, and I always feel such a positive response. Like, okay, I failed. I feel like I failed at something, even though it's maybe not the big of a deal, but like you said, you put so much more pressure on yourself, you recognize things so much greater. And then when I tell her, I, for the first time in my life, have the response of understanding, being that she's also a mom. you know, and coming from that place. So being that I've been in male-dominated workforces, you don't get that same response. Like, if
No,
you mess
that's what I'm
up,
saying. You look around, you're like, nobody understands. Everyone's smiling and nodding, but no one has any idea what you're going through
Or they're
or how
saying,
you're
I told you
feeling about
so.
it.
yeah,
It's just a different
they
experience.
expect it as well. They expect you to fail, or they expect you to have these meltdowns, or they expect
I was
you.
waiting for this. You're like, no.
Yeah, and I'm like, you know, we're all entitled to it, I think, but I think it's having that person to maybe bounce off of, so that we don't have it in front of the people that are obviously not going to respond in the right way. You know, to pick us back up again is really important.
Yeah.
Support system is everything.
To a future self, for some advice that you wish you would have had prior, like what would that be to our audience or anyone that's even just sitting and thinking about starting a business? Like, what would you give that piece of advice?
To me, it's just like, give yourself some grace. You know, I think when we start, we're always looking for perfection. We're waiting to launch something until it's perfect. We're panicking about the smallest little things, and just giving yourself grace along the way that this is new and it'll all be okay. And if you work hard enough, and if you're passionate enough, and if you're honestly smart enough to kind of navigate your way through, it's all going to be okay. And the amount of negative energy that we waste, and the amount of stress, and the amount of time that we waste on doubting ourselves, and on judging what we're doing, and then on, you know, getting stuck on the mistakes that we made along the way. It's just, it doesn't, that's not what's going to help you, right? What's going to help you is figuring out this is what's working. Learn from your mistakes, but don't dwell on them, and just kind of understand that at the end of the day, it's going to be fine, and nobody cares about your problems and what's going wrong in your business as much as you do. And getting and dwelling on the negative isn't going to push you forward.
How do you manage your home life and your work life? Like, how do you juggle your schedule? I know that you mentioned like checking off the box and making sure there's ROI, but is there anything intentional that you can recommend to other moms and how to juggle your family life versus your work life? Is there like a certain schedule or limit that you put on your time, or how do you juggle the two things? Because I think that is one of the most common questions that I've gotten, and I'm curious to ask you because I'm always looking for answers.
Yeah.
To make
Yeah.
it
I
better.
mean, I would love to know what you do. For me, what I realized is, you know, home life, work life, and also just self-care. I think for a very long time, I was always like, it's fine. I don't have time to work out. I run around so much. Like, everyone's like, how do you stay in shape? I'm like, oh, I just run around. I'm like, no, that's not actually healthy. That's not actually good for you. Like, that's not a good answer anymore. So I started, you know, I always laugh. I'm like, be kind to your future self. Like, as someone who lives by their calendar, like, if my calendar says this, like, I got to do it. I will likely be a few minutes late, but I have to do it and I have to be there. So I schedule massages with, you know, where they're prepaid when I can't get a refund. So, like, I'm going to put that on my calendar for 3 weeks from now when that day happens to be open. And then I'm going to go for that massage because it's good for me. I schedule gym dates with, whether I do yoga with my mom or I see a trainer with one of my friends in my community. Like, I schedule it because I hate being flaky and I hate saying no. And it'll force me, because it's a social affair, that I will go and work out with that person or whatever it is. But I put it on my calendar and I say, okay, I prepaid for the class, or I made a commitment to go with so and so. So I will be there, but I know that I'm doing something and putting something healthy for me on my calendar. And then same thing goes with the kids. Everything goes into the same calendar. Everything's in there. You block out that time. And you just have to be more realistic, which I'm still learning about, you know, managing your time and figuring out, do I have enough time for XYZ? Is this, you know, we all live on to-do lists. You know, you have the master, but then even breaking up the to-do list in multiple sections where it's like, okay, realistically, these are the things I'm going to do this week. And these things I'm not even going to look at until next week, because I think there's so much overwhelm between everything that we're all doing day to day, between the kids and life. And every time you open social media, you're realizing, like, you're forgetting to do this and you're forgetting to do this. And oh, I want to do this and I want to make this real. And like, the overwhelm is so real for all of us that I think just clearing it out and even putting those things on a to-do list, but dating it, being like, this is for week 2 of this month and this is for week 3 of this month, and that's it. Like, I will put in date nights with my husband into the calendar, and we know, like, the babysitter's booked, like, we're going, that's it. I don't care if we're tired, I don't care, whatever. But you just, if you are a person who lives by your calendar, just be kind to your future self and schedule in these things that are really important for you and good for you.
That's the hardest thing, right? Because I mean, now also people have businesses, but then they have side hustles, and then they have other extra activities that they do. And I feel like now, I think I even heard a statistic that most people don't work one job anymore. The majority of
Right.
people have two, even sometimes three jobs. And I think that kind of stemmed out of the pandemic, and everything shifted in the pandemic. I mean, the whole work style, working from home, which now does. I think that the whole like landscape of how we live our lives has changed so much in such a short period of time. And I think that's really hard to navigate because like when my son started kindergarten this year, it was a culture shock. I was like, wait a minute. So I have to drop him off at 8:30 and then I'm supposed to work for 8 hours and then I'm supposed to pick him up by 3. I'm like, wait a minute. How do I pick him up by 3?
The math
If
doesn't
I
add
don't,
up.
yeah, the math doesn't math. And then the homework and then the daily activities. And then if I didn't stay on top of him at night, like and have him in bed by a certain time, which in preschool, I was a very relaxed mom. So if it was 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, I didn't care, 10 o'clock, whatever. But like it got all of a sudden, like my whole life changed, even though I didn't have the schedule or the structure that he needed. I had to make that structure for him, but then there's no time to work. I could completely fill my day with being a mom, not having a job altogether.
100%.
The whole day would be busy. So that's why I think these conversations are so important because women right now juggle so much, and you would think in entrepreneurship you might have some more flexibility, but sometimes it actually brings more demand. So that's why it's so important to know that you're not alone, especially when starting a business, because that's also a challenge.
I talk to different women in different walks of life, whether you are a full-time mom or you have 2 to 3 jobs, there's still a level of, is what I'm doing enough? Which I get sentimental just thinking about it because I feel like as women, we are constantly being critical of ourselves, auditing our time, reflecting on what's working and where's the ROI, and we're jumping into all of these things. And I feel like sometimes you'll die of comparison syndrome. Like, well, that person, because they're a full-time mom, they don't get to go through this, but that same person is thinking through like the entrepreneurial journey. Like, man, how lucky does she get to, you know, let her creative juices flow or go to work or have a lunch break. I remember when I used to go to the office, I was like, oh my God, I get a lunch break. I love coming to work. I work from home. I don't even like eat lunch. So it's just like I'm constantly thinking about how do we support women from all walks of life doing the things that we love and not put like burden or guilt or even that compare, like, you know, stealing their joy for the season that they're in. I don't know the answer to that question. I just felt like this conversation.
I don't know, but I mean, I think a good place to start is remembering that like so much of this is self-inflicted, right?
Exactly.
Like so much, like no one is like I catch myself all the time, right? Like we surprised the kids and took them to Disney, and I'm like up at 1 o'clock in the morning trying to design T-shirts to have like matching family T-shirts, and my husband's looking at me. He's like, "What is literally wrong with you right now? Who cares?"
Use the T-shirts for the memories, for the photos.
But I'm like, who cares except for me? Why? Because I have to like post it on Instagram that we had matching T-shirts, and I'm like literally sitting there for an hour, like texting my friend, "Can I borrow your Cricut?" and like downloading the app of like, how do I design this shirt? And I'm just like panicking. Then I'm like, oh my God, this surprise trip is in 3 days. I should have thought about the shirts. And I'm like, oh my God, you're a psychopath right now. Like, stop it. Go on Amazon, order some Minnie Mouse shirts and some ears, and everything will be okay. This is like a perfect example. Like so much of this is self-inflicted chaos that we just put on ourselves, and nobody cares. Literally nobody cares. And we do this because of what you're saying, like this comparison syndrome of like, you know, we open up our phones and like, well, this person's making homemade organic or, you know, granola bars.
Bread. No, everyone's making their own bread now. Like, who has time to let the bread rise?
I don't know. But that's the thing. It's like you have to just realize like this is where I'm at, like where you said the season that you're in. I can do this, I can't do that. And sure, like as technical as I said, you know, a to-do list, but not just for the right now, for the later. Like, okay, so I will do these things like maybe next season, or maybe I will do these things at another time. But it's like you can't possibly do all those things. And I think back in the day before social media, we didn't know about all these crazy things that people were doing. And sure, there was definitely different stressors, but now it's like we shouldn't know. We should not be exposed to what like 600 of our closest friends are doing on a day-to-day basis and be like, oh, well, all these people are doing all these things and I'm missing out and I'm not doing enough for my kids. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, because just the lunch, I was saying, right, just the lunch boxes alone. They did a Instagram video that was actually really good. It compared like the lunch in the 80s and the 90s for kids versus it is now, with the cut stars and the sandwiches have to be around shaped.
Do your kids get sushi bento boxes and are you making us look bad?
I wish. Only my 2-year-old eats sushi. The other two are on like a strict chicken nugget and mac and cheese diet. So
So your older kids do eat the sushi? Just your
no, the older kids do not. My 2-year-old does.
Okay,
Wow.
of course.
I have failed as a mother,
No. Well, my son won't even eat
but I'm working on it.
At capacity. My son doesn't eat anything. Let's just put it that way. He eats rice, so I love to go to sushi restaurants because they'll have a bowl of rice.
Perfect.
Or
Come on
pasta.
over.
Pretty much I'm limited to those two things.
Carbs.
Carbs, yes. So the last thing I think that we should touch on really quickly is the stigma behind mothers sacrificing time with their children to work, because a lot of people like have judgment. I know that personally, when I posted one time that I had to take my son to a photo shoot with me because he didn't have school that day, somebody put a comment that stuck with me forever, but they said, why don't you just try being a mom? And like essentially meaning that I'm going to work and bringing him along and I'm making him do this horrible thing. But I learned two things from that. Initially, I was like, well, that's rude, you know, because I mean, filtering these comments on Instagram is like a sport of its own, because people really have a lot to say there. But I didn't have the luxury to not work. I was a single mom. I have my son, but also I enjoyed my job. And I think that that's one thing that I wanted to ask you is like, as women, we're not just mothers. Like, we are entrepreneurs. We have goals. We have ideas. We have things that we want to contribute to the world other than just being a mom. And I think that that's one thing that maybe 30 years ago even, because it's not that long ago, that women were very limited. I think in the mid-70s was the first time a woman could actually buy her own house or have a credit card, let alone a business. So I think that it's interesting how time has evolved for women and how things have really changed. But I think there's still this judgment that we should just be moms, but not all of us have the luxury. I mean, some women have lost their husbands, unfortunately, or, got unfortunately divorced or whatever the case may be. But I find it interesting, the comment, because I also noticed that when I bring my son to work, because I was that mom when I started my jewelry business, I had him in my little backpack, and, one of those little sachets things, and I walked jeweler to jeweler because I needed help, and he remembers that in some weird way. Maybe he doesn't remember it like literal, but it's like I've always taken him around my job, and I feel like he has such a drive in him that I don't think he'd have otherwise at such a young age from watching me work and seeing how hard I work, and he respects it. So how do you feel with that as far as like maybe that stigma behind being a working mom?
So here's the thing, and I have conversations with other moms, working moms, not working moms, all the time about this. If you're listening, you will hear judgment on anything you do, right? I was just talking to a mom. She's like, I feel like, I'm taking a step back from work and I feel like I'm getting judgment that I'm not working. And it's like, I feel, how often am I constantly like explaining myself to people who didn't even ask? And I'm like, well, I don't owe you an explanation. Like, I'm doing what I think is right for me and for my family, and that's it, right? And like, I didn't ask for an opinion, but I constantly feel, sometimes you'll talk to certain people and you'll like feel that judgment. Like, people, I mean, all the time, they're like, how do you do it all? Like, do you have enough time to like spend with your kids? And I'm like, yeah, I do, because I sacrifice other things, but yeah, I make it all work, right? Like, I'm a room mom and I do, I volunteer for kindergarten lunch because it's like a 1-year opportunity and I would never miss that. But I think people will always judge you because you're working too much, you're working too little, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, like, you need to do what you feel is right. And I think like for working moms, because I feel like, yes, there's definitely a lot of judgment for people, do you have enough time for your kids? Are you, who's watching them? Why don't you be focused on them? When you're happy, your kids are happier. Right? When you feel like you're passionate about something, your kids will also learn to be passionate about something. And I think at the end of the day, you have to realize, and you have to kind of just think through, what do you want your kids to learn from you? Like, what do you want to show them? Like, what do you want them to learn from you and watching you, right? Because yes, you can tell your kids whatever, but them watching you, that's how they learn. Yeah. Like, what kind of example are you setting? So for me, I know when I'm motivated, when I'm passionate, when I'm working hard, and they can see that, I want my girls to see that. I want my girl, like, I love the fact that, like, we had a ribbon cutting ceremony with a local mayor's office for like one of our new locations last week. And like, we brought the kids. Was it a huge pain? Of course. Is my mom amazing and a trooper and comes along to like help with them? Yes. But like, yeah, I love the fact that like my girls are sitting there with the mayor cutting the ribbon at every ceremony I can bring them to. And they go to school and they tell everybody like, oh, you know, we opened a restaurant. We went to the ribbon cutting. They like bring the ribbon to school. Is it so difficult? Yeah. We get home at 10 o'clock. The next morning's a disaster. Of course, there's like, you know, things that I'm sure I'm being judged for also that, oh, you let your kids go to sleep at 10 o'clock on a weeknight. Yes, I did, because it was an amazing experience for them and like they love it. And I love that they can like see me in action and be a part of that. So that's what I say.
But it's so great for other moms to see that and to hear that even if you look like you have it all together online, like I love that you're sharing with us because it's real. It's real, and you have those moments where it doesn't matter, and that's so great that you like remind everybody of that. That it doesn't matter if you woke up a little late or just shoveled in the morning, because what comes out of that is so much more important, and it's the time between your family, and it's such an important moment.
Well, I know we talked a lot about how valuable time is, so we just appreciate you so much, like carving out that time on your calendar to chat with us. And every episode for On Your Plate, we provide a grant. It's a parental leave grant or an inside, like in-kind donation. Sometimes women just need groceries, right, when they're going through these things. So we just appreciate you giving back your time of knowledge, but also helping us just spread the wealth and all the resources for women entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much.
So we hope that you enjoyed, and stay tuned for more. Subscribe to our channel On Your Plate and smash that like button because we got more to come.
Let's go.